Major funding for KPBS Evening Edition has been made possible in part by Bill Howe Family of Companies, providing San Diego with plumbing, heating and air, restoration, flood and remodeling services for over 40 years. Call 1-800-BILL-HOWE or visit billhowe.com. And by the Conrad Prebys Foundation, Darlene Marcos Shiley, and by the following. And by viewers like you. Thank you.
The first in the nation task force studying reparations for Black Californians is meeting here in San Diego. Thank you for joining us. I'm Maya Trabulsi. The state task force is looking to get public feedback on how the descendants of enslaved people should be compensated. KPBS reporter Kitty Alvarado is at the San Diego State University Alumni Center, where today's session just wrapped up. Kitty?
That's right, Maya, and this is the first day of public hearings here in San Diego held by the state task force, and it's about the legacy, the harm the legacy of slavery has caused to African Americans. And that state task force has already issued a report on that legacy. That report says that the system has been racist, and today the public had the opportunity to discuss what reparations would look like. The cause, they had the opportunity to share their stories, to weigh in on some of the report and what they would hope that the reparations would look like. The California Secretary of State, Dr. Shirley Rubber, gave the opening remarks, and Mayor Todd Gloria spoke as well, but a man named Bishop Henry Williams silenced the crowd.
I am an 88-year-old slave from Leesburg, Florida. They put me in slavery picking oranges when I was a youngster. And God blessed me to escape. I feel that would be a little bit of justice, you know. My mom worked herself to death. I used to tell my dad, I said, Dad, send Mama home. Don't let Mama stay out in the field.
And you heard him there. He told us he really felt heard, and that's what today was about, giving the public the opportunity to have their say. There were a lot of people who didn't have that opportunity, but they will have that opportunity tomorrow, as that meeting will get underway tomorrow at 9 a.m. at the Parma Center here at SDSU, and hopefully a lot more people will have that opportunity, and that will, a lot of people will also get the opportunity to hear from experts. That will be an all-day meeting. So again, here at the Parma Center at SDSU, all-day meeting, and it is open to the public. You don't have to register. Anyone could come and sit in on the meetings. That meeting will also be live streamed if you don't have the opportunity to attend in person. Reporting live from SDSU, Kitty Alvarado, back to you in the studio.
Protests are expected across the country tonight after Memphis police released video of officers brutally beating a black man. Tyree Nichols later died in the hospital. As Chris Wynn reports, his family wanted the video to be released.
One officer kicked him like he was kicking a football.
You're going to see acts that defy humanity.
That's how Tyree Nichols' stepfather and the Memphis police chief described the disturbing video that shows the fatal police encounter that led to the firing and arrest of 5 black police officers. 29-year-old Nichols was pulled over in a traffic stop on January 7th that ultimately led to a deadly beating. He would die 3 days later in the hospital. The Memphis police chief says they have not been able to find probable cause for the traffic stop, which the former officers involved said was for reckless driving.
We've been unable to substantiate that at this time.
5 officers have been charged with second-degree murder, along with several other charges.
I think people can draw their own conclusions, but I don't imagine there'll be a lot of perceived ambiguity.
Nichols' mother says she has not been able to bring herself to watch the video.
From what I hear, it's horrific. And the humanity of it all. Where was the humanity? They beat my son like a piñata.
But the victim's family says they want this footage seen by the public.
Hopefully from this situation that we have reform, that police get better training.
Chris Wynn, KPBS News.
Whistleblowers filed complaints about problems in the public defender's office in late 2020, and that was 2 years before a jury awarded $2.6 million to an ex-employee in his wrongful termination suit. KPBS's Amitha Sharma reports.
In November 2020, at least 2 whistleblowers filed complaints against the public defender's office with San Diego County. The complaints alleged retaliation, hostility, racial insensitivity, and conflict of interest. The allegations followed the firings of 3 deputy public defenders, including Zach Davina, who earlier this month won a $2.6 million judgment in a wrongful termination lawsuit against the county. County spokesman Mike Workman told KPBS in an email that the county's Office of Ethics and Compliance investigated the whistleblower complaints, but Workman said the probe was suspended when officials learned that 2 of the 3 fired deputy public defenders might sue. Dan Eaton is a San Diego legal analyst.
Once litigation begins, it is not uncommon for whatever investigation is in process to be put on hold, which is what the county essentially did. And that's because the litigation process itself has a whole different set of rules for finding out what happened.
This raises questions as to whether anything has been done over the past 2 years about the alleged hostile work environment inside the public defender's office. KPBS asked the county for details on the investigation. When was the probe launched? How many people were interviewed? And when was it suspended? The county refused to comment, but Eaton says county officials had choices.
A county doesn't have to put an investigation on hold.
Here's what we do know about the investigation. Lawyer Chris Ludmer represents ex-deputy public defenders Davina and Michelle Reynoso, who has also filed a wrongful termination suit. Ludmer says he notified the county on November 24th, 2020, that litigation was pending. That was about 3 weeks after the whistleblowers filed their complaints. Ludmer says the county never contacted his clients for an interview about the complaints. However, the county did forward the complaints to public defender management. Testimony during Davina's wrongful termination trial revealed that in early December 2020, a supervisor in the public defender's office said in a letter to the county that an internal HR investigation report had determined the whistleblower complaints were unfounded. That's the same report public defender Randy Mize testified during trial that he signed, knowing it contained false statements by supervisors in his office.
I'll bet 10 to 1 that decision to put the investigation on hold was dictated by the lawyers in the litigation, or lawyers for the organization.
New York University law professor Stephen Gillers says an employer is obligated to investigate allegations of discrimination, harassment, and retaliation. In other words, the law doesn't change just because an employer has been sued.
The concern of the organization is to make sure that things are being done properly, whatever the legal fallout in a litigation.
In Davina's case, the jury agreed that as a gay man, he was discriminated against for his gender expression. At one point, Davina was asked whether he was too flamboyant and animated during his tenure review panel. The jury also found that Davina faced retaliation. Gillers says the pressure only intensifies on a workplace to investigate when jurors agree with the plaintiff, such as they did in Davina's wrongful termination lawsuit. That jury also found that the county did nothing to prevent discrimination and retaliation against Davina.
The heat is on, and they have an affirmative obligation to figure out what it is that was going on that persuaded the jury to award a multi-million-dollar verdict.
Amita Sharma, KPBS News.
Homeless outreach work continues today, and this time for people living in RVs or cars. KPBS's North County reporter Tanya Thorne has a look at the efforts in Escondido.
After the volunteers have gone home, the work continues for outreach workers like Sergio Cardonas.
This morning, we're focusing on counting RVs.
He is a homeless outreach worker and case manager for Interfaith Community Services in Escondido. While the point-in-time count took place on Thursday, outreach workers get additional time to count more people experiencing homelessness. Cardona says people living in RVs, in their cars, and hidden in encampments are often unaccounted for.
What is underestimated is that there's more people that are experiencing homelessness at the moment. At times, it feels overwhelming.
Cardona says he has seen an increase in the number of people living in recreational vehicles in Escondido. Earlier this month, the city of Escondido considered passing stricter RV parking regulations. RV parking would only be allowed in authorized areas or once a month for a 24-hour period within 100 yards of the registered address.
I do get concerns from my constituents about RV parking on their streets, not being able to see when they're pulling out of the street, things like that. So I acknowledge that there's challenges, right?
Council member Consuelo Martinez said concerns over the increase in RVs needs to be addressed, but that options other than harsher parking regulations need to be explored.
I do think that we need to provide options for folks, being that we don't have enough housing. And I know that we have over 1,000 families from our schools who are unhoused.
The ordinance was rejected and will return to City Council when more information and options are put together by city staff. Until then, outreach workers like Cardonas continue doing what they can.
We need more services, more resources, more housing being built. These are people that have, feelings and emotions, and they need the help.
Tanya Thorne, KPBS News.
There's been a long-running legal fight over how much money San Diegans with housing vouchers can get. KPBS investigative reporter Claire Tregesser says while the case has been dismissed, the fight is not over.
It's difficult being poor and on Section 8. But
Tasha Williamson has a housing voucher that helps her pay rent. Last year, her voucher amount went up by a lot. That saved her after her rent increased.
Unfortunately, due to SDG&E going up, it really hasn't changed much. And the fact that food has gone up, so it's almost I'm back where I was at.
Last year, in the midst of a long-running lawsuit, the city's Housing Commission raised its voucher amounts significantly. They went up by 37% for the most expensive neighborhoods. Now, there's a $1 million legal fight over who gets credit for the higher amounts. The fight started back in 2019. The San Diego NAACP and San Diego Tenants Union sued the Housing Commission. They claimed the commission didn't give people enough money to live in neighborhoods with better amenities and better schools. The suit argues that this causes racial segregation. Then in 2022, the Housing Commission raised its voucher amounts significantly. So the plaintiffs declared victory and asked that their lawsuit be dismissed. Their attorney, Parisa Ajadi Matsudi, says the increases were a direct result of their lawsuit.
Here, the substantial change the Housing Commission made constituted nothing short of a leapfrogging over years of woefully inadequate payment standards. In fact, for high opportunity neighborhoods, it was a larger increase percentage-wise than for all 4 of the previous years combined. The court found the Housing Commission made the change because of the lawsuit.
But the Housing Commission objects to that idea. Interim CEO Jeff Davis says the agency raised the voucher amounts because it succeeded in getting more money from the federal government.
And that success allowed us to substantially raise our payment standards that year. Our methodology for determining payment standards each year has not changed, despite what some have implied. No litigation had any effect on these changes whatsoever.
The issue isn't just about who gets credit for the bigger vouchers. It's about money for lawyers. A recent court ruling says if plaintiffs succeed in bringing about change, they can collect attorney's fees from the other side. That's what happened in this case. A judge says the San Diego Housing Commission has to repay the attorney's fees for the plaintiffs, more than $1 million. But the legal battle may continue. The Housing Commission Board of Directors recently voted to instruct their attorneys to explore further action. Claire Tregesser, KPBS News.
The wind is much calmer today in San Diego, and that made cleaning up yesterday's mess a bit easier. City staff had a full day of clearing debris at Balboa Park, and they tell us that 35 trees were uprooted, leading to the closure of the park to protect public safety. But not everyone made it out of harm's way.
It was like an 80 to 100-foot eucalyptus tree fell and caused a lot of damage, as you can see here on the sidewalk, and to a planter. This tree also hit a 30-year-old female who was seriously injured.
And Balboa Park is fully open today. All those downed trees are unusual, but they're not unheard of. City staff say it happens after periods of wet weather like we've seen lately.
Welcome. Well, thanks for tuning in. Let's start you off with your weather headlines. A mild Friday and Saturday. Nothing too big to worry about, but we do have a cold storm on the way Sunday into early next week. That's going to shake things up a bit. We're talking rain, low elevation snow, and gusty winds. Now tonight across Metro, we're dropping down to a low of 48 with partly cloudy skies. Overall along the coastal areas, staying in the 40s, Oceanside down to 42. And then we're going to come a little bit eastward. We're going to go over towards the mountains, and we're going to drop down to 38 to Mount Laguna, Ramona at 33, and then Borrego Springs dropping down to a low of 39. But for tomorrow, we'll have plenty of sunshine. San Diego reaching the low 60s. Similar story in Oceanside. Ramona at 61, Mount Laguna topping off in the mid 40s, and Borrego Springs at 67. Now, we are going to be again shaking things up towards the end of the weekend. We do have a secondary system on the way. Those clouds will just build, especially along the coast throughout the weekend, but staying dry. Now Sunday, by Sunday afternoon, that's when those showers will start to push in. Going to start off as spotty, but again, we could see some moderate rain at times. This colder storm again is going to dig across the southwest Sunday into Monday. We're going to talk lowering snow levels too for more mountainous regions throughout the state of California. Isolated thunderstorms, you can't rule that out, with hail, gusty winds, and travel delays expected. Now for the coast, Saturday, again, you're in the clear with the high of 62. That rain moves in for Sunday with some drizzle. Going to linger into Monday. We're dropping down to the 50s along the coast, and we're going to stay there through Tuesday, but back up to the 60s again by Wednesday. Similar story, more inland. We're talking rain and drizzle for Sunday, showers into Monday. We're dropping down to the 50s. Tuesday, back up to the 60s. And here closer towards the mountains, that's where we're going to be seeing some flurries too. Rain and snow Sunday into Monday. It is going to be colder, dropping down to the 20s by Monday, 30 by Tuesday, with the high of 37 by Wednesday. And along the deserts, we even could again pick up some showers for Monday, dipping down to the 50s quickly, but back up to the 60s by Tuesday. For KPBS News, I'm meteorologist Bree Guy.
Career Day at one North County middle school took on new meaning today as students heard from adults in professions like law enforcement and financial planning. KPBS education reporter MG Perez has more on the reality check they provided.
13-year-old William is a 7th grade student here at Oak Crest Middle School in Encinitas. He and his classmates learned a lot this morning about some pretty potent professions.
This is similar to getting an ultrasound of a baby, but it's an ultrasound of the heart.
They deliver those cases and those bad guys to me at the DA's office.
Definitely the world is crazy today.
This is the generation that experienced social justice protests and a crippling COVID pandemic. Paralyzing politics have provided hard lessons from adults, too.
Some of the things they do are surprising. Obviously, I wouldn't do it myself. I want to have, obviously, a family, a positive environment for my kids when I have kids. And I want to be successful for sure.
Someone in the world is alive today who's going to walk on the surface of Mars. It could be you.
The climate change crisis could lead these students to careers that are quite literally out of this world. Susan Kurtik is here to share her 26-year career with NASA as a computer scientist.
How I got here, what this journey was like, and for me, I love to think that, especially with all of the girls, that they can see themselves.
13-year-old Alex is one of those 8th grade girls looking for more than financial gain in a career.
I should choose a job that makes me happy, and a lot of times people choose jobs for money. They don't end up having a very happy life.
Career day at Oakcrest Middle School turned out to be much more than expected.
Well, we're here as an ambassador for the criminal justice system. We still feel strongly that it's the most righteous path and the righteous profession that you could choose.
The message seems to have been heard. MG Perez, KPBS News.
As we get a better idea of how much money the holiday travel mess cost Southwest, the airline is facing more turbulence ahead. SDSU's Mira Kopik explains the Friday business report.
Well, you know, Southwest took a huge financial hit. This holiday travel meltdown has cost them over $800 million in pre-tax dollars and over $220 million in net losses. And of this $800 million, $400 million is just on the flight cancellations alone, and the other $400 million is on the reimbursements they're making to travelers. So if you're looking to travel, now's the time, because the number of deals on Southwest Airlines, because they're willing to take that hit, is very, very high versus other airlines that you might book on. But you know what it did is also really brought the attention of the Department of Transportation, who's investigating claims that Southwest really deceived consumers by scheduling more flights than it can handle during this time frame. And the issue is, under federal law, this unfair and deceptive practice can really bring on huge fines by the Department of Transportation.
For the past 3 days, the Del Mar Fairgrounds has hosted dozens of explosive detection experts. They're taking part in the National Odor Recognition Training and Testing Program known as NORT. KPBS's Charlotte Radulovich takes us there.
Squeaky toys, wagging tails, and a ton of sniffing. Don't let those dogs fool you. They're actually on the clock, in training with the Bureau of Alcohol, Tobacco, Firearms, and Explosives.
The process that's behind me, NORT consists of 30 search containers. Out of those 30 search containers, 10 of them contain different explosives.
36 K9 teams from law enforcement agencies across Southern California took part, including Barney and his partner, Special Agent K9 handler Stephen Carrico.
We spent 3 months training with the dog initially, so right from day one, we just kind of developed a little bond together. And at this point, he's my dog. He's my buddy.
Do you have any idea of where the explosives are?
He does.
Okay. To show off his skills, Barney performed a special search for us, involving all camera gear.
He's an excellent dog. I mean, we'll go out on search warrants or whatever we're called out to do. He's very reliable.
To develop such an accurate sense of smell takes consistency, which is why these trainings are mandatory. All of these canines are already certified and in service.
You have dog teams here that they're responsible for protecting federal buildings. You have dog teams that are used for keeping the transportation environment safe. You have dog teams that are used for special events.
But like any other employees, all these canines will return home after an intense day of training or work in the field to their families to just be dogs.
He's a goofy boy. I mean, he's just, you know, when he's working, he's great, and he does what he's supposed to do. He's an excellent dog, has an excellent nose. And when he's at home and he's off duty, he's just like a normal dog.
Charlotte Radulovich, KPBS News.
Whether you want to be provoked, charmed, or force-fed fondue, there's a movie for you this weekend. KPBS Cinema Junkie Beth Accomando has these recommendations.
When Brandon Cronenberg's Infinity Pool screened last week at the Sundance Film Festival, it came with all sorts of warnings about gore, violence, sexual content, and strobe effects. It delivers on all that, but with an elegance of craft and meticulous care that might surprise you. The film's set in an isolated foreign resort where rich guests are told not to venture off the barbed wire compound. But when James breaks the rules and gets involved in a tragic accident, he discovers that the punishment for any crime is death.
But for a significant sum, we'll build a double to stand in for your execution.
And that raises a question. How would you behave if you could escape repercussions for any crime? Cronenberg's film is many things. It's sci-fi, horror, trippy thriller, skewer-the-rich satire, and disturbing psychological study. But most of all, it's audacious, exhilarating filmmaking from a unique cinematic voice. Also, consider this crowd-funded indie grindhouse film, Mad Heidi. I may be coming to this late, but I had a rollicking good time finding it online. The story involves literal cheese Nazis who want to eradicate the lactose intolerant from the country. But Mad Heidi stands in their way. For a low-budget film, it looks amazingly good, and there are moments of wacky inspiration, like a fondue torture scene. Rent and support this cheesy Swissploitation. And finally, Living serves up a remake of Akira Kurosawa's Ikiru. It's not easy to remake a classic, but Living smartly moves the story to 1950s England to give Bill Nye a poignant showcase. A single shot of Nye's restrained British civil servant standing on tiptoe to see the site of a new playground conveys more joy than most entire movies deliver. The film is as restrained as its main character, but its delicate style proves surprisingly and deeply moving. Beth Accomando, KPBS News.
You can find tonight's stories on our website, kpbs.org. Thanks for joining us. I'm Maya Trabulsi. Good night.
Major funding for KPBS Evening Edition has been made possible in part by Bill Howe Family of Companies, providing San Diego with plumbing, heating and air, restoration, flood and remodeling services for over 40 years. Call 1-800-BILL-HOWE or visit billhowe.com. And by the Conrad Prebys Foundation, Darlene Marco Shiley. And by the following: by viewers like you. Thank you.